I don't know how to be better yet, but I know I don't want to stay the same.
Then stay and let yourself change.
Every part of me learned how to survive, except the part that wants you.
Then let that part stay. I'm not going anywhere.
A Korean mafia boss hated black women agreed to one blind date. She changed his life forever. Kang Tae-jun had killed 17 men in his lifetime, but none of them had terrified him like the woman sitting across from him in a Hongdae cafe, sipping overpriced coffee and casually dismantling every lie he'd ever told himself. She knew what he was, the blood on his hands, the empire built on broken bones, and she stayed anyway. That's when he realized love wasn't the weakness his father warned him about. It was the apocalypse he never saw coming. Before this story pulls you into a world of power, prejudice, and dangerous love, do me a quick favor. If you enjoy intense romance, shocking twists, and stories that challenge expectations, hit the like button, share this video with someone who loves dramatic love stories, and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps keep these powerful stories coming. Now get comfortable, because one blind date is about to change everything, and what happens next will leave you questioning love, loyalty, and fate until the very end. The thing about being Seoul's most feared crime lord was that people rarely told you the truth. They told you what kept them breathing. Kang Tae-jun sat in his penthouse office, 63 floors above the city, that paid him tribute in silence and cash, watching young Min-ho sweat. Min-ho was his second-in-command, his fixer, the only man in his organization who'd survived 12 years by knowing exactly when to push and when to grovel. Right now, he looked like a man who'd just volunteered to defuse a bomb with chopsticks. A blind date, Tae-jun repeated, his voice flat as a cemetery in winter. You dragged yourself up here, past 3 armed guards and my excellent whiskey collection, to suggest I go on a blind date. The Japanese investors can go to hell. Preferably the Buddhist one with all the creative torture. Tae-jun didn't look up from the contract he was reading. The print was small. The consequences for breaching it were not. Tell them I'm busy being a sociopath. They'll understand. Min-ho did something incredibly stupid then. He sat down without permission. Tae-jun's eyes lifted slowly from the page, the kind of slow that preceded unfortunate accidents involving rooftops and gravity. Did I invite you to sit? No. But you'll want to be sitting too when I explain. Min-ho pulled out his tablet, tapped it twice, and turned it around. The Tanaka Group is pulling 2 billion won from the Busan expansion unless you prove you're stable. Their cultural advisor, American woman, very connected, very opinionated, convinced them you're a liability. Specifically, she thinks you're a racist, emotionally stunted psychopath who can't be trusted with international partnerships. She sounds perceptive. She's also the colleague of someone we need you to meet. Min-ho swiped to a photo. Amara Okoye, Nigerian-American, 29, works for a UN development program. She's in Seoul for 6 months consulting on maternal health initiatives. Smart, well-connected, and most importantly, she has no idea who you are. Tae-jun stared at the woman on the screen. Dark skin, natural hair twisted into something elegant and deliberate, eyes that looked like they could read a balance sheet, and a liar with equal precision. She was beautiful in a way that felt dangerous, like a knife wrapped in silk. She was also black. The observation landed in his mind the way facts did. Neutral, processed, filed away under a category he'd never examined too closely. His grandfather had opinions about black people, loud ones, delivered over soju and cigarettes at family gatherings Tae-jun barely remembered. His father had simply never mentioned them, as if entire continents of people didn't exist in his carefully curated worldview. Tae-jun had inherited both attitudes, like he'd inherited his cheekbones and his capacity for violence, unquestioned, unexamined, gathering dust in the corners of his consciousness. Absolutely not, he said. Tae-jun, I said no. He stood, walking to the window. Seoul glittered below him like a jewel box full of secrets. He owned pieces of the city the maps didn't show: the midnight economy, the shadow infrastructure, the quiet places where problems were solved with pragmatism and plastic sheeting. Find someone else. Someone who looks like someone they'd expect. Minho was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of a friendship that predated the empire. You know what's funny? She'd probably hate you anyway. You're exactly the kind of man she spends her life fighting against, privileged, powerful, completely disconnected from the people your decisions destroy. Taejun turned. What's your point? My point is you're going to do this anyway, because you're too smart to let prejudice cost you 2 billion won. My point is you'll sit through one dinner, smile like a human being, and convince the Tanaka group you're capable of basic decency. My point is, Minho stood, meeting his eyes with the kind of directness that should have been suicidal. You're better than your grandfather's ignorance. Prove it. The penthouse was silent except for the city humming below. Taejun poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey, drank it in one swallow, and made a decision he'd regret for the rest of his considerably complicated life. One dinner. 2 hours maximum. Then this circus ends. Done. Minho was already texting. Mingles. Friday. 8 p.m. Private room. I'll tell her it's arranged by a mutual friend. Professional networking. Very respectable. She'll think you're in finance or tech or something equally boring. What if she looks me up? She won't. She's too busy saving lives to Google every blind date. Minho paused at the door. Oh, and Taejun? Try not to be yourself. Be someone likable. Pretend you have a soul. Get out. Minho left, grinning like a man who'd just won a bet with the devil. Taejun poured another drink and stared at Amara Okoye's photo until his vision blurred. She looked like trouble. Like the kind of woman who asked questions that didn't have easy answers. Like someone who'd never encountered a man like him and lived to be unimpressed. Good, he thought. This would be easy. 2 hours of polite conversation, enough eye contact to seem human, and then back to his regularly scheduled life of morally flexible business decisions. He had no idea he was about to meet the only person in Seoul who didn't fear him. He had no idea that was exactly the problem. Friday arrived like an execution date. Taejun spent 20 minutes choosing a suit, the charcoal Tom Ford, conservative enough to seem trustworthy, expensive enough to remind everyone who paid for the room. His driver, Young Soo, took one look at him and said, "You look like you're going to a funeral." "I am. Mine." Mingles was the kind of restaurant where politicians brought mistresses and CEOs laundered reputations. Taejun owned 40% of it, which meant the owner personally greeted him. The chef prepared dishes that weren't on any menu, and the waitstaff knew to be invisible unless summoned. The private room was on the 3rd floor, soundproofed, elegant, with a view of Gangnam that cost extra even when you owned the building. He arrived deliberately late. Power play. Basic psychology. Established dominance before the first word. Then Amara Okoye walked in, and every strategy he'd ever learned evaporated like water on summer pavement. She wore blue, not the pale, apologetic blue of someone trying to blend in, but a deep, electric blue that demanded attention and got it. Her natural hair was styled in a way that looked effortless and probably took an hour. She carried herself like royalty visiting a subordinate's territory, and when the server tried to pull out her chair, she waved him off and did it herself. Then she looked at Taejun, and he felt something he hadn't felt in 2 decades. Uncertainty. "You must be Taejun," she said in Korean that was better than his English would ever be. "You're 7 minutes late. That's either a power play or traffic. Which one should I be insulted by?" His brain, which had orchestrated hostile takeovers and navigated Yakuza politics, completely stalled. Traffic, he managed. Liar. She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that suggested she collected liars like receipts. "But I appreciate the attempt. Shall we order? Or are you going to spend the whole evening trying to intimidate me with silence? Because I should warn you, I have 6 brothers back in Lagos. I'm immune to brooding." Taejun had killed men for less disrespect. Instead, he laughed. Actually laughed. The sound startled him more than it startled her. The woman who wouldn't break. The server arrived with the timing of a man who'd been watching through a crack in the door, waiting for the exact moment when silence became awkward. He bowed so low his forehead nearly kissed the table, then rattled off the evening's specials in the kind of reverent whisper usually reserved for funerals or very expensive wine. Taejun ordered, in clipped Korean, the chef's selection, premium sake, the usual performance of wealth and control. He expected Amara to nod along, maybe ask what half the dishes were, play the role of impressed foreigner. Instead, she interrupted in perfect Korean. Actually, I'll have the Hamelpagian, the galbijim, and do you have any soju that isn't trying to prove something? Something my grandmother would drink, not something that costs more than healthcare. The server blinked. Taejun blinked. Somewhere in the kitchen, a chef probably blinked. I've been here 8 months, Amara said, switching to English and directing her words at Taejun like bullets. I'm tired of people assuming I can't read a menu. I'm tired of servers speaking slower and louder like I'm deaf instead of foreign. And I'm especially tired of men ordering for me like I'm a decorative plant that eats whatever you water it with. The server fled.
Wisely.
Taejun studied her across the table, this woman who'd walked into his territory and immediately rearranged the furniture. You don't make things easy, do you? Why would I? Easy is boring. Easy gets you nowhere. She leaned back, crossing her legs in a way that was somehow both elegant and combative. So, what do you actually do, Taejun? And please don't say import-export. Every criminal in Asia says import-export. His hand, reaching for the water glass, froze midair. Excuse me? Oh, come on. The private room in a restaurant you clearly own? The staff treating you like you're one health inspection away from making them disappear? The suit that costs more than my rent? You're either a CEO, a politician's son, or you do something that makes people nervous. She tilted her head, studying him like a specimen under glass. My money's on the third option. For a moment, a genuinely dangerous moment, Taejun considered telling her the truth. Not the sanitized version Minho had probably prepared, but the real truth, that he built an empire from his father's corpse and other people's fear. That the Han River had swallowed more of his problems than therapy ever could. That the hands currently folded on the table had done things that would make her UN colleagues write strongly worded reports. Instead, he said, I'm in acquisitions. Hostile ones, I'm guessing. The hostility depends on how reasonable people are. And are people usually reasonable? Almost never. She laughed, a real laugh, bright and unexpected, like finding flowers growing through concrete. Okay, points for honesty. See, this is better than the brooding silence thing. You almost seem human now. Almost. You do this thing with your eyes, she said, gesturing vaguely at his face. They go completely flat, like someone unplugged your emotions. It's unsettling. Do you practice that in the mirror, or is it natural talent? Natural talent. That's somehow worse. The food arrived in waves, beautiful, expensive, precisely arranged. Amara attacked her Pajian like she was personally offended by its existence, and when the server poured their drinks, she raised her soju glass in a toast. To terrible first dates and the stories they make. Taejun raised his glass. This is that bad? Oh, this is spectacular. I'm going to tell my friends about you for years. Remember that time I went on a blind date with a Korean gangster who tried to intimidate me with expensive food? She drank, then set down her glass with a decisive click. But here's the thing, you're not actually that scary. You want to be scary. You've built this whole persona around being scary. But underneath all that, she leaned forward, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something with vanilla and defiance. You look sad. I'm not sad. Liar. Again. You're collecting quite a record. She speared a piece of galbi with her chopsticks. Who taught you that the only way to survive is to make everyone afraid of you? The question hit like a knife between ribs, precise, unexpected, fatal. Taejun felt something crack in his chest, some carefully maintained wall developing its first fault line. My father, he said, and immediately regretted it. Was he right? He kept breathing until a heart attack killed him. So, partially right. That's the saddest thing I've heard all week, and I work in maternal mortality statistics. Amara set down her chopsticks, her expression softening into something that looked dangerously close to compassion. You know what I think? I think you're exhausted. I think you've been playing this role so long you forgot it was a costume. I think you don't know anything about me. You're right. I don't. But I know what loneliness looks like because I see it in the mirror every morning. She said it matter-of-factly, like admitting she preferred tea to coffee. I'm 8,000 miles from home, working in a country that thinks I'm either a curiosity or a problem. Half my colleagues treat me like a diversity quota. The other half assume I'm here because some man brought me. And my ex-boyfriend, Derek, absolute waste of a good name, keeps texting me like I'm supposed to forgive him for cheating because he did it respectfully. Despite himself, despite everything, Tae-jun felt his mouth twitch. Respectfully. His word. Apparently, he told her about me first, so that makes it better. Men are incredible. She drained her soju. But you know what? I'd rather be lonely and honest than surrounded by people who make me smaller. So if this dinner is some performance where you pretend to be interested while planning your exit strategy, just tell me now. I'll finish this excellent food, and we'll never speak again. The server chose that moment to refill their glasses. Tae-jun waited until he disappeared, then did something he hadn't done in years. He told the truth. I agreed to this because investors think I'm unstable. My associate thought having dinner with someone respectable would make me seem human. I was supposed to smile, make small talk, and return to my life. I wasn't supposed to. He trailed off, unsure how to finish. Find me interesting? Yes. Well. Amara raised her glass again. That's the most honest thing a man said to me in 6 months. To unexpected complications. They drank. They talked. About everything and nothing. She told him about her work, fighting maternal mortality rates in rural communities, navigating bureaucracies that moved like glaciers, finding hope in impossible places. He told her carefully edited stories about his business, leaving out the parts that involved blood and lawyers. But mostly he listened to her talk about missing jollof rice and her mother's prayers, about hiking trails in Bukhansan where she went to remember what silence felt like, about the particular loneliness of being brilliant in rooms that expected you to be grateful just for entry. You ask dangerous questions, he said finally. That's not a question. That's an observation. Why did you agree to this? The blind date. You clearly didn't need to. Amara was quiet for a moment, twirling her glass between her fingers. Honestly, I was curious. My colleague said you were interesting but difficult, which is code for probably an asshole but rich enough that people tolerate it. I wanted to see if you'd prove her wrong. And, still deciding, she stood, collecting her purse, and Tae-jun felt something close to panic. Wait. That's it. It's late. I have work tomorrow. And you, she smiled that dangerous smile again. You have some thinking to do. About what? About why you want to see me again. Because you do. I can see it in the way you keep forgetting to do that creepy eye thing when I'm talking. The way you laughed 3 times tonight, I counted. The way you're looking at me right now like I'm a problem you can't solve with money or threats. She was right. Devastatingly right. Tae-jun stood, his height usually an advantage, but somehow she made him feel small. When can I see you again? When you figure out how to ask me yourself. Not through an associate. Not through a carefully orchestrated business dinner. You. Calling me. Using words. Like a person. She left. Just walked out of the private room, down the stairs, out of the restaurant, out of his carefully controlled environment. Tae-jun stood among the remnants of dinner. Empty plates, half-finished sake, the ghost of her perfume, and felt something he hadn't felt since his father's funeral. Absolutely terrified. And underneath the terror, more dangerous, curious. He pulled out his phone. Min-ho answered on the first ring. How did it go? Get me her number. The investors are satisfied. You don't have to, Min-ho. Get me her number. A pause. Then, carefully. Tae-jun. She's not part of our world. If you pursue this, I know what she's not. I know what this isn't. Get me the number. 3 days later, Min-ho delivered the news with the expression of a man who'd just been asked to negotiate with a suicide bomber. She said no. Taejun looked up from the contracts he wasn't reading. What? I approached her about another meeting. Professional networking, very casual. She said, and I quote, "Tell your friend if he wants to see me, he can ask himself. I'm not a business transaction to be arranged by assistants." Minho set down his tablet like it might explode. She also said, "You have her number. You just need to use it." "I don't have her." Taejun stopped.
Pulled out his phone.
Found a contact he didn't remember saving. Amara. Dangerous questions. He must have taken it from the reservation list. Must have done it without thinking. Must have known, even 3 days ago, that this wasn't over. He stared at the number for 10 minutes. Kang Taejun, who'd negotiated with Yakuza bosses and corrupt politicians, who'd orchestrated deals worth billions, who'd survived 2 assassination attempts before he turned 25, couldn't press call. Finally he did. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Thought you'd never ask." Coffee and consequences. "There's a cafe in Hongdae," Amara said, her voice carrying that same amused confidence that had haunted him for 3 days. Loud, chaotic, full of students who wouldn't know a crime lord if he bought them coffee. "Meet me there tomorrow, 2 p.m. And Taejun. Yes. Don't bring bodyguards. Don't rent out the cafe. Don't do whatever power play nonsense you're already planning. Just show up." She texted him the address and hung up before he could respond. Taejun stared at his phone like it had personally betrayed him. Minho, who'd been listening from the doorway with poorly concealed terror, cleared his throat. "This is a mistake. Probably. She's going to get hurt. Or worse, you're going to, what? Feel something." Taejun's laugh was sharp enough to cut. Too late. The next afternoon, he did something he hadn't done in 15 years. He dressed down.
Jeans.
A plain black sweater. A baseball cap that made him look like every other soul hipster trying too hard to look effortless. Young-soo nearly crashed the car when he saw him. "Boss, you look human?" "I was going to say uncomfortable, but sure." The cafe was exactly as Amara promised, aggressively cheerful, packed with university students arguing about philosophy and K-pop with equal passion, smelling like espresso and youthful optimism. Taejun felt like a shark that had accidentally swum into a koi pond. Then he saw her. Amara sat in the corner, wearing jeans and a Columbia University hoodie, her natural hair pulled into a messy bun, reading a book of poetry like the chaos around her didn't exist. She looked younger.
Softer.
Completely devastating. She glanced up, saw him, and smiled. "You actually came. And you followed instructions. I'm impressed." He sat down across from her, hyper-aware of how exposed he felt without his usual armor of suits and silent threats. "You make it sound like I'm badly trained. You are badly trained. You've spent so long being feared that you forgot how to be normal." She closed her book, Worcestershire, he noticed, and leaned forward.
"So,
"Why did you call me, Kang Taejun?" "Because you told me to." Wrong answer. Try again. He should have walked away. Should have recognized this woman as the existential threat she clearly was. Instead, he said, "Because I can't stop thinking about you. Because you asked me questions no one's asked in 20 years. Because when you left that restaurant, you took something with you and I want it back." Amara's eyes widened slightly, the first crack in her composure. "That's dangerously honest. You said not to lie." "I did say that." She ordered for both of them. Americanos, nothing fancy. And when the drinks arrived, she wrapped her hands around her cup like she was holding something precious. "Okay, the cards on the table. I looked you up." His blood turned to ice. And you're exactly what I thought. Kang Taejun, Seoul's most successful businessman. She made air quotes that could have killed. Rumored connections to organized crime. 3 different investigative journalists have tried writing about you. All 3 suddenly decided to pursue other careers. Your father died under mysterious circumstances that were never investigated. You own half of Gangnam through shell corporations. Should I continue? Please don't. I should run. Every survival instinct I have is screaming at me to finish this coffee and block your number. She took a sip, her eyes never leaving his. But here's the thing, I also saw the way you looked at me when I talked about my work. Like you actually cared. Like for 5 minutes, you forgot to be whoever you pretend to be. And I'm curious about that person. That person doesn't exist. Liar. Third time. You're really bad at this honesty thing. She set down her cup with deliberate care.
So here's my deal.
I'll keep seeing you, but you have to promise me something. What? Don't lie to me. Not ever. I can handle darkness. I've seen enough of it in my work. I can't handle deception. The moment you lie to me, this ends. Understood? He should have said no. Should have protected her from the disaster he carried in his chest like shrapnel. Should have recognized that loving him was a death sentence wrapped in expensive cologne. Instead, he reached across the table and took her hand. Her skin was warm,
Alive.
real in a way nothing in his world had felt for years. I understand.
Good.
She squeezed his hand once, then pulled away, already standing. Walk me home. They walked through Hongdae's twisted streets, past street performers and food vendors, past couples taking selfies and students arguing about music. Taejun felt naked without his bodyguards, without his car, without any of the infrastructure that usually kept the world at a safe distance.
It was terrifying.
It was perfect. At her building, a modest apartment complex in Yeonam-dong, Amara stopped at the entrance. This is me. When can I see you again? Greedy. But she was smiling. Friday. There's a gallery opening in Sancheong-dong. My colleague got me tickets.
Come with me.
Wear something that doesn't scream, I own the building. I might actually own the building. Then wear something anyway. She kissed him. Quick, soft, tasting like coffee and possibilities. Then she disappeared into her building, leaving him standing on the sidewalk like a teenager who'd just discovered what hope felt like. His phone buzzed. Minho, asterisk, the Tanaka deal closed. Congratulations, asterisk. Taejun deleted the message. The deal didn't matter anymore. Nothing mattered except Friday. The Gallery of Ghosts. Friday arrived wrapped in autumn rain and terrible decisions. Taejun stood in front of his closet, $300,000 worth of suits, each one a carefully constructed lie, and realized he had nothing appropriate for a gallery opening that didn't involve intimidation or hostile takeovers. He settled on black jeans, a charcoal sweater, and a leather jacket that made him look like he was auditioning for a cologne commercial. Young Soo took one look and said, "You're going to get your heart broken. Drive." The gallery was in Sancheong-dong, tucked between a tea house and a boutique selling ceramics that cost more than kidneys. Amara waited outside, wearing a burgundy dress that made the rain look jealous, her hair twisted into an elegant updo that exposed the graceful line of her neck. "You're on time," she said, kissing his cheek. "Character development. I'm learning." Inside, the gallery was packed with Seoul's artistic elite, painters who thought suffering was a personality trait, critics who spoke in metaphors that meant nothing, wealthy collectors who bought art the way Taejun bought silence. The exhibition was titled Displacement and featured photographs of migrants, refugees, people caught between worlds. Amara moved through the space like she belonged, stopping at each photograph with genuine attention. Taejun followed, hyper-aware of the glances they attracted, a black woman and a Korean man who looked too dangerous for culture. "This one," Amara said, stopping in front of a photograph of a young girl carrying water in a place that looked like hope had died of thirst. "This is where I spent 6 months before Seoul. South Sudan. That girl's name is Ayak. She walks 11 kilometers every day for water that will probably make her sick." That's unacceptable?
Yes.
Fixable? Also yes. But it requires people actually caring more than they care about quarterly profits. She turned to him, her eyes bright with something between passion and rage. "Your world and my world are so different, Taejun. You move money that could save thousands of lives, and you use it to buy what? More control? More fear?" He should have been angry. Instead, he felt something worse, ashamed. "I never thought about it like that." "I know. That's the problem with people like you. You don't have to think about it." She moved to the next photograph, a Syrian family in a refugee camp, their eyes carrying more weight than bodies should hold. But here's what's interesting. You're here. You showed up. You're listening. That's more than most people in your tax bracket would do. Is this a test? Everything's a test. Life's a test.
Coffee was a test.
This, she gestured at the gallery, at them, at the impossible space they occupied together, is definitely a test. Am I passing? Still grading. They moved through the exhibition in comfortable silence until they reached the final room. The photograph there stopped Taejun cold, a Korean comfort woman, ancient and dignified, staring at the camera with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall and learned that justice was a myth people told themselves to sleep at night. My grandmother, he said quietly, the words escaping before his brain authorized them. Amara turned to him, surprise flickering across her face. What? Not her specifically, but women like her. My grandmother was taken when she was 15. Spent 3 years in a comfort station in Manchuria. Came back with scars she never talked about and silence she never broke. He stared at the photograph, memories rising like corpses from shallow graves. My father learned cruelty from her survival. Taught me that the world was a place where you either dominated or disappeared. He wasn't wrong. He wasn't right either.
No.
He wasn't. Taejun felt Amara's hand slip into his, warm, alive, tethering him to something beyond the wreckage of inherited trauma. She died when I was 12. Never smiled once that I remember. My father said she'd forgotten how. That's the saddest origin story I've ever heard. It's just history. History is never just anything. It's the ghost that raises us. Amara squeezed his hand. But you know what? You're not your grandmother's pain or your father's cruelty. You're you, whoever that is. I don't know who that is. Then maybe it's time to find out. They left the gallery as rain turned serious, Seoul's streets becoming rivers of neon and regret. Taejun's driver was waiting, but Amara shook her head. Let's walk. I want to see you without the infrastructure. They walked through Bukshin Hanok village, past traditional houses that had survived Japanese occupation and modernization and time itself. The rain soaked through Taejun's expensive jacket, ruined his carefully constructed hair, made him look human and small and utterly undefended. Tell me something true, Amara said. Something you've never told anyone. That's a dangerous request. I'm a dangerous woman.
He stopped walking.
Rain poured down, washing away pretense and protocol and every defense mechanism he'd built since childhood. I'm terrified of you. Good answer. Not finished. I'm terrified because you make me want things I thought I'd killed. Like being known. Like being seen as more than what I do. Like, he reached up, cupping her face with hands that had done terrible things and were now trembling. Like maybe I could be someone worth loving. Amara's eyes glistened, rain or tears. He couldn't tell. You absolute disaster of a man. Then she kissed him. Not the polite kiss from before, but something desperate and real, tasting like rain and ruin and the terrifying possibility of redemption. They kissed in the middle of an empty street in Bukshin, two people from different worlds discovering they spoke the same language of loneliness. When they broke apart, she whispered, "This is going to destroy us both. I know. Your world won't accept me. I know. People will try to hurt me to hurt you. I know. And I'll kill them." He said it matter-of-factly, like discussing weather. Anyone who touches you dies screaming. That's not a threat. It's a promise. She should have run. Should have recognized the violence in his voice as the warning it was.
Instead, she laughed.
You really are terrible at romance. I'm learning. Learn faster. He walked her home, kissed her goodnight like a teenager who discovered what wanting felt like, and returned to his penthouse feeling like he'd been dismantled and poorly reassembled. Minho was waiting with a bottle of whiskey and bad news. We have a problem. Of course we do. Choi Sung-min knows about the girl. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Choi Sung-min was Taejun's oldest enemy, a rival who controlled Busan's port operations and had been trying to expand into Seoul for 5 years. He was also the kind of man who understood that the best way to hurt Taejun wasn't through business or bullets. It was through the few things he actually cared about. How much does he know? Enough. He has photos. You and her at the gallery, walking in Buckshin, kissing in the rain like you're in a terrible drama. Min-ho poured them both drinks. He's going to use her, Taejun. Either as leverage or what? Min-ho's silence was answer enough. Taejun drained his whiskey, the burn doing nothing to erase the ice spreading through his chest. He had two choices: end things with Amara now, before Choi could weaponize her, or prepare for war. He thought about her smile, her dangerous questions, the way she looked at him like he was worth saving. Call everyone, he said quietly. Full council. Tomorrow morning. What are you going to do? What I should have done years ago. Burn Choi Sung-min's world to ash. And anyone else who thinks they can touch what's mine. Min-ho stared at him. You're going to war. Over a woman you've known for 2 weeks. No, Taejun poured another drink. I'm going to war because for the first time in my life, I have something worth protecting. Blood and boardrooms. The council meeting happened in a warehouse in Uedo that officially didn't exist. 12 men sat around a steel table, the heads of Seoul's most profitable criminal enterprises, men who'd built empires from extortion, trafficking, and the kind of violence that never made headlines because headlines required witnesses. Taejun arrived 15 minutes late, which was early for him. Every man at the table stood when he entered. Respect or fear, he'd stopped distinguishing between the 2 years ago. Sit, he said, taking his place at the head of the table. Min-ho stood behind him, silent as a grave. We have a problem. Choi Sung-min is making moves in our territory. He's using personal leverage to destabilize operations. This ends today. Park Jin-woo, who ran the Gangnam gambling operations, leaned forward. What kind of personal leverage? The kind that's none of your business. Boss, if Choi has information that could compromise the organization, he has a photograph.
Of me.
With a woman. Taejun's voice could have frozen mercury. Anyone who thinks that's an operational weakness should leave now. The door's behind you. You'll be dead before you reach it, but at least you'll die with your opinions intact. No one moved.
Good.
Here's what's going to happen. Choi controls 3 shipping routes through Busan, 2 container facilities, and the dockworkers union. We're taking all of it. Tonight. Questions? Lee Sang-ho, the money man, cleared his throat. That's an act of war. The Busan families will retaliate. We'll lose people, resources. The police might actually notice. Let them notice. Let everyone notice. Taejun stood, placing both hands on the table. For too long, we've operated on the assumption that peace is profitable.
It is.
But there's something more valuable than profit. Precedent. If Choi thinks he can threaten what's mine and live to negotiate about it, then every 2-bit gangster in Korea will think they can do the same. So we're sending a message that lasts generations. Touch what belongs to Kang Taejun, and your bloodline ends. The room was silent except for the sound of 12 men recalculating their mortality. Dispatch teams, Taejun continued. I want Choi's shipping routes shut down by midnight. I want his facilities emptied. I want every man who works for him offered triple salary to switch sides or a bullet to switch worlds. Their choice. And Choi himself, his smile could have curdled blood. I want delivered to me.
Alive.
I have questions about his photography hobby. Min-ho distributed folders containing operational details, targets, timelines, contingencies. The council dispersed like smoke, each man returning to his territory to orchestrate violence with the precision of a symphony conductor. Only Min-ho remained. You're doing this for her, he said quietly. I'm doing this because Choi's been a problem for 5 years. She's just the excuse I needed. Liar. Taejun turned, and for a moment, his carefully constructed mask slipped. If something happens to her because of me, because of what I am, I'll burn this entire city down. And when there's nothing left but ash, I'll start on Busan. Tell me I'm overreacting. You're not. That's what terrifies me.
Good.
Use that fear. Make sure everyone else feels it too. The violence was surgical. By 11 p.m., Choi's shipping operation looked like a corporation that had fired everyone simultaneously. By midnight, his container facilities were empty except for rats and regret. By 1 a.m., Choi Sung-min himself was zip-tied to a chair in the same warehouse where the council had met, bleeding from places that weren't immediately fatal but certainly hurt. Tae-jun arrived at 2 a.m., wearing the same Tom Ford suit he'd worn to dinner with Amara. Symbolic, he thought. Different contexts, same man, infinite capacity for contradiction. Choi looked up, one eye swollen shut, the other carrying the desperate clarity of a man who just realized he'd made a career-ending mistake. Tae-jun. We can negotiate. We can't. Tae-jun pulled up a chair, sitting down with the casual posture of someone discussing weather. You photographed me. With a woman. Why? Intelligence. Leverage. Standard practice. Wrong answer. Tae-jun nodded to Minho, who stepped forward and broke two of Choi's fingers with the efficiency of someone opening a particularly stubborn jar. The screaming echoed off concrete walls designed specifically for echoing screams. When it subsided to whimpering, Tae-jun continued. Let me explain something. I don't care about your shipping routes. I don't care about Busan. I care about the precedent you set when you decided my personal life was your business. So here's what happens next. You're going to tell me everyone you shared those photos with. Then you're going to retire. Immediately.
Completely.
Move to Jeju, take up fishing, pretend this life never happened. If I ever hear your name again, if you so much as jaywalk in a city I own, I'll kill everyone you love in alphabetical order. Starting with your mother. Are we clear? Choi nodded, so hard his neck might have cracked.
Good. Names. Now.
It took an hour to extract the full list. 3 rival bosses, 2 corrupt police officials, 1 journalist with flexible ethics. By dawn, Tae-jun had dispatched teams to handle each one. Some would receive money and warnings. Others would receive less pleasant conversations in less pleasant warehouses. The journalist, a weasel named Kim who wrote exposés for gangsters who paid better than newspapers, would receive a personal visit. Tae-jun found him in a cafe in Itaewon, working on a laptop surrounded by empty coffee cups and the desperate optimism of someone who thought words could protect them from consequences. Kim Jae-sung, Tae-jun said, sitting down uninvited. Kim looked up, and whatever he saw in Tae-jun's eyes made him very pale very quickly. Mr. Kong. I was just deleting files. Photos. Anything related to me and a woman named Amara Okoye. You're going to do that now while I watch. Then you're going to forget you ever saw those photos. Understand? Of course. Absolutely. Already deleted. Show me. Kim's hands shook as he navigated folders, permanently deleting images that showed Tae-jun and Amara at the gallery, in Bukshin, looking at each other like the world had been reduced to just them. Each deleted photo felt like erasing evidence of something beautiful, and Tae-jun hated it. Done, Kim whispered.
Good.
Now listen carefully. That woman is off limits. Not just to you, to everyone. You're going to spread the word in your professional circles. Anyone who photographs her, follows her, mentions her name in connection with me, they're not getting a warning. They're getting a funeral. This is non-negotiable. Understood? I hope so. Because if I have to have this conversation twice, the second time ends with your family identifying you by dental records. Tae-jun left Kim sitting in existential terror and returned to his penthouse as dawn broke over Seoul. The city looked almost innocent in early light, all that darkness temporarily hidden by golden hour photography. His phone buzzed. Amara. Asterisk, good morning. Coffee later? I found this amazing place in Ixieandong. Asterisk. He stared at the message, her brightness, her normalcy, her complete ignorance of the violence he'd orchestrated in her name. The disconnect was dizzying. He should tell her. Should explain that loving him came with consequences measured in broken bones and tactical disappearances. Should give her the chance to run while she still could. Instead, he typed, asterisk, send me the address. I'll be there. Asterisk. Because Kang Tae-jun was many things: killer, criminal, the devil wearing Armani, but he was also, for the first time in his brutal life, completely in love. And that made him more dangerous than he'd ever been before. The price of protection. The cafe in Ixindong was the kind of place Instagram influencers descended upon like well-dressed locusts: exposed brick, plants hanging from rafters, coffee served in cups that looked like pottery projects. Amara sat by the window, sunlight making her glow like something holy that had wandered into his profane life by mistake. She waved when she saw him, completely unaware that he'd spent the previous 12 hours dismantling a criminal empire to keep her safe. "You look tired," she said as he sat down. "Busy night. Let me guess. Acquisitions?" She made air quotes, smiling like his violence was an inside joke they shared. Something like that. They ordered coffee, hers with oat milk, his black as his soul, according to Minho's increasingly concerned text messages. Amara talked about her week: a breakthrough in a rural clinic partnership, bureaucratic nightmares involving import permits for medical supplies, her colleague Derek's continued attempts to reconnect despite being told repeatedly where he could shove his apologies. Tae-jun listened, watching her hands move as she spoke, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about saving lives. She existed in a world where problems had solutions, where effort created change, where goodness actually mattered. His world was the opposite. Problems had body counts. Effort created casualties. Goodness was a luxury purchased with other people's suffering. "You're doing it again," Amara said. "What?" "The eye thing. Where you disappear behind your face." She reached across the table, touching his hand. "What's wrong?" "Everything," he thought. "I'm falling in love with you, which means I've painted a target on your back. I've killed parts of myself trying to protect you, and you don't even know it. I'm terrified that loving me will destroy you, and I'm too selfish to walk away."
Nothing, he said.
"Just thinking about
You. Us.
whether this," he gestured vaguely at the space between them, "is fair to you." Amara set down her cup with deliberate care. "Okay. Cards on the table time. You think I don't know what you are? You think I haven't noticed the way people move when you enter rooms? The way servers panic and managers appear? The way you have entire conversations without speaking, just by looking at people?" She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "I'm not naive, Tae-jun. I know exactly what you do. I just don't know why you do it. Because it's all I know. Because my father taught me the world respects two things: money and fear. Because..." He stopped, the truth lodged in his throat like broken glass. "Because you're scared," she finished. "Scared that if you stop being terrifying, people will see you're just human. Breakable. Like the rest of us." "I've killed people, Amara. I know. I've ruined lives. Families. I've done things that would make your UN colleagues write reports that spawn international investigations." "I know. Then why are you still here?" She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the table between them. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of decisions that would change both their lives. "Because I see something in you that you don't see in yourself. Potential. The capacity for something other than violence. And yes, maybe that makes me naive or stupid or the kind of woman who thinks she can fix broken men, but I don't want to fix you. I want to know you.
The real you.
Not the performance. There is no real me. Just versions of the performance. More lies. You're really bad at this." She stood, gathering her things. "I have a meeting. Walk me." They walked through Ixindong's narrow alleys, past traditional hammocks converted into boutiques and cafes, past tourists taking selfies with souls past. Amara slipped her hand into his, and Tae-jun felt something crack in his chest, some wall he'd built in childhood finally developing fatal structural damage. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Okay. Someone tried to use you against me. A rival. He took photos of us. Planned to leverage them." Amara stopped walking. And I handled it." Define handled. "He's retired.
Permanently.
Anyone who saw those photos has been convinced to forget them. You're safe." Her expression was unreadable. You did this without telling me. Yes. Without asking if I wanted protection. Yes. You just decided, unilaterally, that my safety was your responsibility and acted accordingly. Yes. She should have been angry, should have recognized this as the controlling behavior it was. Instead, she asked, "Did anyone die?" "Not yet. But they will if they threaten you again." She trailed off, searching for words. "That's the most terrifying romantic gesture anyone's ever made for me." "I'm not romantic. I'm practical." "You're an idiot." But she was smiling. That dangerous smile that made him forget he was supposed to be untouchable. "But you're my idiot." Apparently. She kissed him there in the alley, surrounded by Soul's beautiful contradictions, ancient and modern, violent and gentle, everything he was compressed into geography. When they broke apart, she whispered against his mouth, "Don't hide things from me. Even the dark things. Especially the dark things. They're all dark things." "Then, I guess you'll be busy being honest." His phone buzzed. Min-ho, emergency. Office. Now, Taejun's blood turned cold. Min-ho didn't panic. If he was using words like emergency, Seoul was either on fire or about to be. "I have to go," he said. "Work. Always." Amara studied his face, reading tension like text. "Be careful. Whatever you're about to do, come back from it." "I will. Promise me." "I promise." He kissed her once more, memorizing the taste of her, coffee and hope and everything good he'd ever wanted and never deserved, then disappeared into Seoul's afternoon crowds. Min-ho was waiting in the penthouse, and his expression could have stopped hearts. "Choi's dead." Taejun froze halfway to the whiskey.
What?
Suicide. Allegedly. Hung himself in his Jeju safe house 6 hours after you released him. Min-ho pulled up security footage on his tablet. "But look at this. The angle's wrong. The knot's wrong. Someone staged it."
Who?
"My money's on the Busan families." Choi was weak, compromised. They saw an opportunity to eliminate him and blame you simultaneously. The police are already asking questions. Your name's coming up in conversations it shouldn't. Taejun poured himself 4 fingers of whiskey, drained it, poured another. The violence was escalating faster than he'd calculated. What started as protecting Amara was metastasizing into full-scale war. Options. We go dark. Shut down operations. Let things cool down. Maybe 6 months, maybe a year. No, Taejun. I said no. Shutting down makes us look weak. Weak gets you killed. He stared out at Seoul, his kingdom of shadows and compromises. We escalate. Hit the Busan families before they consolidate. Make it so bloody, so expensive, so absolutely devastating that no one ever questions our strength again. That's insane. That's survival. And the girl? Amara? You think she'll stay with you through a gang war? Taejun was quiet for a long moment. Then, she doesn't have a choice. Neither do I. This is who I am. Then God help both of you. Min-ho left, and Taejun stood alone in his penthouse, watching Seoul's evening lights bloom like wounds. Somewhere out there, Amara was probably at her meeting, discussing maternal mortality statistics and policy solutions, completely unaware that loving him had just made her a casualty of a war she didn't even know was happening. His phone buzzed. Amara. Dinner tomorrow? My place? I'll cook. Fair warning, I'm terrible at Korean food but excellent at jollof rice. He stared at the message, her lightness, her normalness, her beautiful ignorance of the darkness accelerating toward her like a freight train. He should end this. Should tell her the truth, that being with him was a death sentence, that his world devoured everything soft and good, that love was the most dangerous weapon his enemies could use against him. Instead, he typed, "I'll bring wine." Because Kang Taejun was a coward. Not in business. Not in violence. But in the possibility that someone might actually love him despite everything. He was absolutely, fatally weak. And weakness, in his world, always ended in blood. Redemption in ruins. Dinner at Amara's apartment was supposed to be simple. jollof rice, wine, conversation that didn't involve corpses or territorial disputes. Taejun arrived with flowers, white lilies, because Minho said they meant purity and he needed all the symbolic help he could get, and a bottle of wine that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Amara opened the door wearing an apron that said, "I put the hot in psychotic," and he fell a little more in love with her terrible sense of humor. "Come in. Fair warning, my kitchen looks like a crime scene, but the food's good." Her apartment was small, cozy, filled with books and plants and photos of family back in Lagos. It smelled like spices and home, concepts that had been theoretical to Taejun until approximately 30 seconds ago.
They ate. They talked.
She told him about her mother's disapproval of her moving to Korea, her father's quiet pride, her brother's threats to fly out and check anyone who hurt her. He told her carefully edited stories about his childhood, leaving out the parts involving blood and inherited trauma. "You're doing it again," she said, refilling his wine. "Editing. I can tell when you skip the dark parts. Your jaw does this thing." "What thing?" "Like you're physically swallowing words." She set down the bottle, her expression serious. "I meant what I said. Don't hide from me." So he told her. Not everything, that would take years and several therapists, but enough. About his father's lessons in cruelty. About building walls so high he forgot what they protected. About the violence he'd orchestrated in her name and would orchestrate again, without hesitation. "I've made you a target," he finished. "Just by caring about you. The smart thing, the right thing, would be to walk away before you get hurt." Amara was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Do you want to walk away?" "No, then don't." She stood, crossing to where he sat, taking his face in her hands. "I'm not fragile, Taejun. I've survived things that would break other people. I've seen children die from preventable diseases. I've negotiated with warlords and bureaucrats, same thing, different suits. I've been underestimated, dismissed, and threatened by men who thought my skin and gender made me weak. So trust me when I say, I can handle your darkness. You shouldn't have to. Maybe not. But I choose to. That's love, you idiot. Choosing someone despite the cost." He kissed her then, desperate, grateful, terrified, and she kissed back like she was claiming territory in his chest where walls used to be. They stumbled to her bedroom, shedding clothes and pretense, discovering each other with the urgency of people who knew tomorrow wasn't guaranteed. Afterward, tangled in sheets and limbs and the terrifying vulnerability of being known, Amara traced patterns on his chest. "Promise me something. Anything. Don't let your world swallow you. Don't become the monster you pretend to be. Because I see who you really are. And he's worth saving." Taejun wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that love could redeem violence, that choosing her meant choosing something better than the legacy his father left him. His phone buzzed. "Minho, Busan family struck back. 3 of our warehouses. Casualties, asterisk. The war had found him. Like it always did. Like it always would. But this time, he had something worth fighting for beyond power or profit or the empty satisfaction of fear. He had her. "I love you," he said, the words foreign and terrifying and absolutely true. Amara smiled against his skin. "I know. Now prove it. Choose different." 2 months later, the Busan War ended not with blood, but with boardrooms. Taejun negotiated treaties, redistributed territories, paid reparations to families who'd lost people in the violence. He didn't become good. That ship had sailed and sunk years ago, but he became better. Strategic. Precise. Less interested in fear than in sustainability. Minho thought he'd lost his mind. The council thought he'd grown soft. Amara thought he was learning. They were all right. Taejun proposed on a hiking trail in Bukhansan, without rings or planning, just raw honesty and trembling hands. Amara said yes, then laughed at how terrified he looked. "You've negotiated with Yakuza," she said. "And you're scared of me?" "Terrified. You're much more dangerous." Good answer. They married quietly, courthouse ceremony, Minho as witness, Amara's family watching via video call and making very specific threats about what would happen if he hurt their daughter. Kang Tae-jun, Seoul's most feared crime lord, promised a roomful of Nigerians he'd never met that he'd spend his life protecting their daughter.
He meant it.
Because love, real love, wasn't the weakness his father warned about. It was the strength he never knew he needed. The Yendi hit subscribe if you believe everyone deserves a second chance. Only people who've given up on redemption won't subscribe.